Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do a little bit of all things creepy. Whether that be me reading scary stories that you guys have sent in to me, talking about folklore, scary books, scary movies, all that stuff. We do it all here, and I post daily. So that sounds cool. I would love to have you here. Now, please check out the description below for where to send in your stories and how to do that. And you'll also find social media links and podcast episode links. So, with all that being said, let's get into some stories. For some background, I've always been kind of sensitive to things, so I experience more than my fair share of spooky things. Most don't intimidate me or leave a lasting impression, but here are a few that did. Number 1. My family are all first responders. My dad was an EMT and a volunteer firefighter since he was young. He worked as a corrections officer for years, recently retired. Since there are a lot of firefighters in particular in my family, we'd host family events like weddings and birthday parties at our local fire hall. Everyone has stories about that fire hall. My great aunt, who's since passed, went to her next phase insisting it was haunted. I was so young and I was never told any of this. The fire hall had 2 floors and a basement. The main floor was where we had all of our parties, and the second floor was blocked off because the building was incredibly old and probably had contaminants in it, not to mention a rotting floor or whatever. Anyways, we always wanted to go see the fire trucks they kept in the basement or the garage, so my dad offered to take us down there while the other firemen were just chilling and waiting for a call. The staircase to the basement was this beautiful dark wood spiral staircase that was very strong and sturdy. Despite this, I hated those stairs and avoided the hallway they were in. Too self-conscious to tell my dad that I was afraid of some stairs, I ignored my gut anyway. Well, the second my feet were on those stairs, I got a weird feeling that someone was watching me. Then I kept getting this thought in my head over and over: you're going to be pushed. Even though it was the last one in the group and there was nobody behind me. Well, years later, my great aunt tells me that she and her friends had gone there 50 or so years ago and went up to the second floor before it was blocked off. The spiral staircase went all the way up from the basement to the second floor. They heard a man's voice up there. They were all women, and quickly but calmly left. My great aunt's friend was pushed down the stairs and ended up completely snapping her femur in half. It took her several weeks to heal, and she refused to go back to that fire hall. I don't blame her. Oh my god. In that same fire hall, my great aunt brought one of the little girls she babysat to clean up after an event. The girl, who I'll call E, apparently pushed toy cars down the hallway and they'd come back to her. I also had my chair pulled out from under me. My great aunt insisted it was the same ghost. Second story. I offered to dog sit a neighbor's 4 dogs for a week while they were on vacation. They had 3 pitties and a little Boston Terrier. One of the pits was aggressive and he had to be crated when he wasn't being supervised. They had a gate on the wall that was basic, but it had a secure latch. Both sides had a lip so you could just pull or wiggle the gate open. You had to physically put an effort to open it. I didn't want to spend the night, so the first day I came down and stayed with the dogs. Then, when the street lights came on, I walked back home. They were right down the street. I came back the next morning, and the little dog greeted me at the door. The gate had been flung open in the middle of the night somehow, and the little dog could have gotten hurt. This happened the next 2 nights, and I told my mom because I had a strong feeling that it was a ghost at work. She told me to try talking to it, and I said, "I don't know who you are, but I promise I am not here to hurt anyone. I'm dog sitting. This gate has to stay closed or that little dog will get hurt." And because I thought I knew who it was, the neighbor's mom's deceased husband, I asked him specifically to leave that gate shut. I came back the next morning and it was still shut, so I thanked him and thought that would be it. It wasn't. The next night, a friend and I decided to stay since we needed some time away from family. She fell asleep early and I was just dozing off at midnight when I caught the scent of an older gentleman's cologne. It wasn't my neighbor's husband, as he wore Old Spice and it was very specific. I smelled the couch up and down and couldn't find the scent anywhere. When they came back, I had told them all about it and found out that they kept this deceased man's ashes in their home and that it was his cologne that I smelled. I didn't feel any fear as he was sweet, but the experience stuck with me. Those are creepy. Who was the deceased man? Well, I guess it was like a family friend or something, right? Ooh, yeah, those are creepy. Alright, next story. My dad. So my dad used to live in a house in the Redlands in Brisbane. He also happened to live beside a warlock's house who was quite nice. On a couple of occasions, my dad had nightmares of these little goblin creatures surrounding the warlock's house. They were black with red eyes and normally would just stay there. But one night my dad was awake and saw them surrounding his bed, trying to drag him out of it. His mom or my nana rushed in and checked on him to see if he was okay. The night after that happened, he found out that the warlock had passed away. When he moved away from Brisbane and had me and my brother, he also saw a really heavy metal oil bin roll by itself. My mom. One night, what's a warlock? Is that a male witch?
I'm not sure what the difference is between that and a witch.
I'm gonna look that up, because a male practitioner of witchcraft, sorcery, or black magic. Okay, yeah, it's literally a male witch.
Oh.
Cool. Okay, my mom. One night, my mom had to take out the trash, but her dog ran out the door before she could stop it. So she went to look for the dog and eventually saw this figure of what she thought was the dog, but still looking at it, her dog appeared beside of her. As soon as that happened, the creature started running at her. Its shadow became larger of what a normal dog would be. She ran into the house screaming. Oh! Me. I've always had really creepy dreams ever since I was little of a strange woman who was all shadowy with red eyes. Since I can remember, ever since I was like 3, I've had this dream. It's still reoccurring even now, but as I've gotten older, it gets worse and worse. It started with it appearing when I was asleep, and it normally appeared at the door, its hands scraping it slightly. I couldn't move and I couldn't scream. When I was 10, it eventually showed itself beside my bed when I was awake. I hid under the sheets before I eventually went to sleep, and then when I was 14, it stopped for a while. But now I'm 17 and it appeared again, mimicking the voice of my mother in the dream. As I normally have very vivid dreams, it's hard to tell if it's real or not. Since I had seen this thing in real life, I was positively shitting myself. The latest instance was a couple of days ago, when I met the lady in the dream who, although different, brought the same feeling of insufferable fear. I asked her if she was Lilith, and she said yes, but now I don't think it was because she made my palms bleed in my dream. It seemed like she was trying to get me to stay there. When I'm awake, I also swear I hear my mom calling my name, so much that I say, "What?" Okay, let me pause on that as someone who works with Lilith, literally has her sigil tattooed on me. That was not Lilith. Now, Lilith has presented herself to me, not in a dream. Okay, she has, but she did whenever she was trying to get my attention. I had this like vision of a woman with red hair that actually scared me, because she was trying to get my attention. But she's never harmed me in a dream state or outside of it. I don't think that's something that she would ever do. So I don't think that was her. I think that was someone pretending to be her, maybe pretending to be a safe space. But that's not a wise idea for whatever that was. That's not smart. That's not a smart thing to do. You could call out to her to see if she could help you and essentially tattle on whatever this was, though. That's what I would recommend doing. My brother. He would normally sleep talk, saying, "Stop, stop, you're hurting me." Though he's not as open to what the dream was about, he used to talk a lot in his dreams. He also once saw a black shadowy figure in his room, too, who he had the same black figure and red eyes. It scared him so much that he stayed in my room for a week. He also swore that he saw something on top of the stairs outside the window. His room was beside a set of stairs, and he could hear tapping on his window. Also, the dreams always seemed to be at the same reoccurring time, 3:30 in the morning. You guys need some, like, wards up for when you're sleeping in your bedroom, because something is very much taking advantage of you guys in that vulnerable state, and I don't like that. And I don't like that it's pretending to be Lilith. That actually really irritates me. I would recommend thinking about reaching out to her and tattling on this thing and asking for protection, because what? Alright, next story. Okay, so this isn't the typical Appalachian lore that you normally tell, but I just watched your video about a North Carolina house that the OP was drawn to, and it reminded me of a house near my hometown. I currently live in Boone, North Carolina, but I'm originally from a small town near Clayton, North Carolina called Archer Lodge. There was this abandoned house that sat abandoned from the time we moved there till about 3 to 5 years ago. It's a standalone house placed kind of in the woods, but you can still see it when you pass it. It's beautiful. It's blue and has windows everywhere. Even had one of those castle-looking turrets. Turrets? What am I saying right now? When seeing it for the first time back in 2012, I thought it was gorgeous and always wondered why it was abandoned. In probably early 2016, my sister and I, one night, we were teenagers, decided to go to the house just to look. We used to drive around town because there was nothing to do. It was probably about 1 in the morning and we were just sitting in our car in the driveway, with our high beams on, staring at the house, just talking about it, when we got the urge to go explore. I was on board with it until the moment that we opened our doors. When we did, the most unsettling feeling in me came over, and I immediately closed that door. Mind you, it's probably like January or February in central North Carolina, so it's not super cold or windy. The moment I closed my door, a large gust of wind came out of nowhere and just started going. It was like a tiny tornado had hit us. She jumped back in the car with me, and we just waited for the wind to calm down. Then, with our lights still shining at the house and the windows in the turret, we saw a figure standing there. We got scared and sped the fuck out of there. We intended to drive by it at night after to give ourselves a little scare, and she actually ended up going with a friend later on in probably 2018. Flash forward to around half a year after our incident, we came to find the owner of the house, a dude, and his mom had lived there before it was abandoned. He ended up dismembering his mom in the house, burying parts of her behind the house and the other parts of her in the walls. Now, closer to 10 years later, someone bought the house and it's been under remodel for around 2 years. It looks the same but with new windows. It's just a fun little creepy story I thought you might like. In the walls? Ew. Ooh. Alright, next story. I recently stumbled across your account telling stories, and I realized a lot of them are similar to the things that used to happen to me in my home in Ohio. My family left that house years ago, and while there were other reasons to leave, the weird things happening were a factor in moving across the country. What brought this to mind initially was your video on mimics. I had never heard the term before, but it reminded me of what the things in the old house did. Whatever was there normally didn't mind me much and left me alone, but I think maybe there was a mimic there that was targeting me. It started one day when I got home from school and the house was empty. Normally my grandma would be over to watch me and my siblings after school, but she was nowhere to be seen. I settled in to watch TV for the afternoon, not thinking much of it, when I heard my grandma calling for me from the other side of the house. She was saying, "Hello?" again and again, so I figured she just let herself in and I hadn't noticed the door because I was distracted with the TV. I got up to answer and start looking for her. I didn't see her anywhere. I kept walking around the house and I got a really bad feeling because I couldn't find her anywhere in our relatively small trailer. At this point, her voice sounded off, like it was on an answering machine or something. She kept asking, "Where are you? I can't see you. Where are you?" And when I would answer, the voice would say, "I'm right here, silly." After about 30 minutes of me following this voice around to nowhere, it eventually said, "I'm outside. Come outside with me." But it sounded wrong. I told her I wasn't going to come outside, and if it was my grandma, it would have to come in already. That's when my grandma's voice started crying and saying she had fallen down the stairs and that I needed to come out and help her. I called my mom on her landline because I had a really bad feeling, and she answered from my grandma's house with my grandma and said that grandma hadn't been over today. When I hung up, the voice laughed and went away. When I looked outside, nothing was there. Months and months later, my family had started experiencing frankly insane things. Whatever it was didn't like my mom and would throw things at her. My God! All of my chickens had disappeared one by one. I'm autistic, and one of my very big interests is chickens. I really loved them a lot. We had a camera by the coop, and it never caught what was taking them. One night in the summer, after all of them had been gone for a long time, at around 1:45 in the morning, I heard my chickens outside the window. Chickens kind of scream when they get attacked, but this was just normal chicken sounds. Well, the room goes frigid cold, and I could see my breath. Something in me said that if I moved the curtains and looked out for my chickens, something very bad was going to happen, so I froze. The more I ignored it, the more frantic the chicken noises became, until eventually they were screaming like they were being attacked. I could see a humanoid shadow through my curtain. I didn't move. Not at once. All at once, the chicken noises stopped. There was silence for a second or two. Then something slammed into my window so hard it shook. We had witches come look at the house and try to get rid of it. We had paranormal investigators and disprovers come over to tell us what it was, but no one could tell us and no one could get rid of it. We sold the house, and the people who live there now have said that once they pay it off, they're leaving because there's something bad there. Our old neighbors have said that nothing should have been built on that property. I just wanted to share because I'd never heard of a mimic before and it struck a chord. Have a good day. That sounds more like some of the things that lurk in the woods of Appalachia with all that stuff happening. I could be wrong, but that's what that sounds like. Because it's not just mimics that mimic. A lot of things do that. And that sounds suspicious. Anyways, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.